have so much to talk about, so let's get started.
All right.
You have, wow, that was easy. You have such a long career in comedy in New York. You actually got your start when you were in college here, is that right?
That's right. I started doing stand-up while I was going to NYU. It was the summer of my freshman year in 2001, and I started doing stand-up at a new talent night thing at the Comedy Cellar.
What gave you the confidence to do that, having no background?
It was just, it's the same story every comedian tells. I feel like, you have some friends that are like, oh, you're funny, you should try it. And then you do it, and then you have a good time, and you just keep doing it.
Well, most comedians say they bombed the first time.
Yeah, I didn't do good. Didn't do well, but I felt very comfortable on stage, and I felt like it was something that with practice I could get very good at. And I have a pretty obsessive personality, and I enjoy the process of getting better at things. And so I kept doing it, and eventually I think I got okay.
So you thought of yourself as funny, or was it kind of like a secret skill?
Well, I mean, I said things and people laughed, so I assumed there must be something going on. And I enjoyed that and doing that as a kid and my whole life, but I never thought about doing it professionally or using it to have any kind of career, because I grew up in South Carolina where your dreams are very limited. And so it wasn't until I came to New York, I went to it. So some friends told me that, and then I went to a comedy club with some friends, to the Comedy Cellar actually, and saw a guy do horribly, and I was like, oh, I can do at least that. And so that's why I did it.
But you graduated.
I did. I did the perfect lazy Asian move where I checked out, but I still somehow graduated with honors.
What did your parents think of this career path for you?
I brought them out when I did big shows. Like first time I did Carnegie Hall, they came for that, and they had a really good time then. And that's pretty weird to see your son go on stage saying the filthiest stuff, but it's at Carnegie Hall at the same time. So it's kind of like, I think I should be proud of this.
The sort of role of women now, and especially the way women are treated online, is another thing that you guys have touched on.
Oh, yeah.
In the show.
Mm-hmm. I'd done stand-up about that stuff, and what kind of spurred that on was I think I was talking to some of the castmates on Parks and Rec. I think I was talking to Aubrey, and she was telling me, if you start typing Aubrey Plaza into Google, or any female celebrity's name for that matter, if you start typing it into Google, the first thing that comes up is Aubrey Plaza feet. And there's just all these guys that have there's this insane online foot culture.
Everyone at home is Googling this right now.
And it doesn't exist for guys. And then I started thinking about, how there's just kind of the online harassment of female celebrities that just doesn't exist for men. There's no, the amount of death threats someone like Amy Schumer gets versus the amount of death threats Aziz gets, it's a pretty big difference. You can put me, Drake, Lil Wayne, any famous guy, and no one comes close to the death threats that a female celebrity gets, and it's a pretty terrifying thing. And so I started talking about that on stage, and that stuff just eventually evolved into kind of talking about street harassment, whatever. And then we had that idea for that scene in the show where it shows two people walking home from the bar and the difference in their experiences. In my stand-up and everything, there's always an element of social commentary. I would rather do an episode about, Indians on TV and get people talking about those kind of issues than not do that. When people ask me, do you think the diversity stuff's getting better? I'm like, no. Every day I walk to work, we're writing the show, and we walk to work, and I pass these movie posters that are just ridiculous. You pass a cab with a poster for one of these movies that comes out every couple of months where it's a national holiday, and there's 6 white people on it. It's I know some minorities that celebrate these holidays. I think pretty soon it's gonna end when it's Martin Luther King Day, starring Anna Kendrick and Jason Sudeikis. It's crazy. I mean, there's another poster right outside our writer's room. It's one of those Nicholas Sparks books where it's just 2 white people just staring at each other. And it's there's been 20 of those movies. Not once is there a black woman that's staring into a guy's eyes. Everyone has romance in their lives. It's strange that every time it's 2 white people that are falling in love.
Right.
And it's also like, there's the Ghost in the Shell thing, and these excuses they just get so tiresome. And I think everyone's seeing through the bullshit. They're like, well, there's just no stars that look like that. It's like, well, how come you find the white guy stars? Like, you go to Australia and you're like, all right, this guy, Sam Worthington, he's in a movie, Liam Hemsworth, he's Thor, throw him in there. And you make it happen for people that look a certain way. It happens. And the people that are part of the system, they know how to make someone famous. A few people sit in a room and they decide, let's put this person in a shit ton of movies. And then they become really famous, but they just don't do it for people that look a certain way.
You went to the White House for a state dinner recently.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to hear about that experience. You brought your mom as
I took my mom, yeah. She had a good time. People that dinner it's such an interesting group of people. There's a few actors and people like that, and then there's also senators and things like that. And a lot of people came up to my mom and were like, "Oh, you do such a great job in the show." I'm like, "Yeah, she wants to fucking quit. She doesn't want to be in season 2. Tell her to be in it." And yeah, we had a great time. That was really fun, and it's cool to get to do things like that with your mom. If you ever get a chance to go on a crazy date like that, my one piece of advice, take your mom. She'll have a good time and you'll feel good about it. It was a good thing to take her to. I had a good time.
It was the Nordic state dinner, so was the food really crazy and Nordic?
What's funny is I saw Will Ferrell there, and his wife is from Sweden. And so it's like, okay, there's some sort of connection. And he was like, why are you here? Like, you don't look at me and go, Nordic. But I think I'd gotten invited to like the Indian prime minister or something's coming, and they're like, "Oh, well, let's trot out some famous Indians and get Aziz on the phone." And I couldn't make it. I think I was on tour abroad or something, and I was really bummed. And then I think I just kind of got carried over to the Nordic one. When we cast our show, we don't, unless it's a part that kind of, it requires someone is of some ethnicity for a plot point or joke point, we just try to cast the funniest people. I mean, look, like, I talked to Lena Waithe, who plays Denise in our show, and she's like, it's so fun being on the show because it feels like I'm here because I'm funny and you wanted me here, not because you were like, oh, it might be quirky if Dev's friend is this queer lesbian woman. That wasn't the thinking behind it. The thinking was, let's meet a bunch of women to play this part, and whoever's the funniest, let's cast them. And she was the funniest person, and it so happens she was a queer African-American woman, but she was cast because she was the funniest person, and yeah.
Hypothetical situation. You're on a first date. You get into an Uber with your date. Uber driver asks if you have a music request. Ja Rule or R. Kelly?
I think I would immediately put on Ja Rule, Living It Up, which would have been playing on my phone anyway. And I'd just be like, let's just plug this in and continue this song. One time I was at a restaurant with a friend of mine, and they were like, oh, if you want to play music, like, you can hook into our Sonos. And I was like, oh, sure. And it's like a small restaurant. I wasn't like at like some big restaurant. I'm like, I'm taking over the music. There's like one table and our table. It's like late in the night. They're like, oh, if you want to play music, you can play music. And I was like, great. And so I like hooked in, and then I was at dinner with this friend, and I was like, I'm just gonna keep playing Ja Rule, Living It Up, and see how many times we can get away with it before someone says something to us. And the answer was 2.
All right, let's end it on that, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you so much.
It's a great audience. Thank you.